check. Hey, hey. Mic check. No, it's coming.
Hey, it's great to have everyone here. We've got semi-full house and quite a few people online. We've been practicing the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva. And we have been using the unfettered mind. There are many listed. You can Google them on the internet, but we've been using unfettered mind. And it doesn't matter. Some have more affinity than others. But we started with this one. And I want to just read the first 2 paragraphs before we get started. You who see the experience has no coming or going, yet pour your energy solely into helping beings. My excellent teachers and Lord all-seeing, I humbly and constantly honor with my body, speech, and mind. The fully awake, the Buddhas, source of joy and well-being, all come from integrating the noble way, because integration depends on your knowing how to practice. I will explain the practice of all bodhisattvas. And so I invite us to take a moment and consider what we've done in the last few weeks with these practices, what we've chosen to look at, what we've chosen to be with, and how we practiced it. Where have we carried it? How have we held it? How does it show up for ourselves? And truly, the whole point of this 37 practices is just that, practices. It's a way of being in the world. And if we don't take that with it, if we just read it, be done with it, then it's for naught. So I want us to just consider that one more time. The fully awake, the Buddha's source of joy and well-being, all come from integrating the noble way. Because integration depends on your knowing how to practice. I will explain the practice of all bodhisattvas. And with that, I want to read the first verse as well. Right now, you have a good boat. And as Venerable explained, the first reading of this, the boat is our bodies, it's ourselves. Right now, you have a good boat, fully equipped and available, hard to find. To free others and you from the sea of samsara, day and night, fully alert and present, study, reflect, and meditate. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. Today, one of our other practices or discourses discusses the importance of stopping at least 3 times a day to be able to be with what we're doing, how we're doing, and where we're doing it. And these practices offer us an opportunity to do that. So I want to just go ahead and open up, since this is our last day with practices. Next week, we'll be beginning the reading of the Digha Nikaya. I think it's number 16. But for today, I'd like for us to just open up and share our experiences with these 37 practices. Which ones stood out? How have they affected us? Where have we seen ourselves within them? And some of the challenges we've had with that. So I just want to go ahead and open it up to any one of us, both online and here in the Bodhi Home.
I can open it up. Can you hear me?
Can you hear Sukha online? Yes.
Referring to number 20, which has to do with anger. I actually was not focusing on that one, but it came to pass. About a week ago, I went to a meeting that was in North Asheville. It was at 10 a.m. in the morning. Well, I don't normally get up until 9. And then I spend the whole morning in prayer and meditation and exercise. And I don't reach out to the world until 12:30. So to be 45 minutes away in North Asheville at 10 o'clock in the morning in years. It was violent. It was rage. I was petrified in my seat in the car. I didn't drive. I just sat there. And I can't even tell you how much this sent me an email, but I didn't get it. I checked my phone. I didn't get it. And this rage was so filling my physical body that I couldn't just stop it because the body's taken over. And the I behind the I was very aware of this going on and really shocked, but I couldn't do anything about it because now it's a physiological thing. So eventually it dissipated. I never hurt anybody. I never said anything. I never reached out. I never attacked anybody. It was all, I just kept it to myself. That was last week. And just yesterday, I was replaying it in my mind and I thought, oh, I didn't really want to go to the meeting. The reason I went was because I thought it would be politically expedient for me to be there. It would give me brownie points. It would raise myself in the eyes of the people who were there if I was seen there. Ego. And I gave in to ego instead of my authentic self, which said, I don't want to go. And spirit intervened and kept me from getting that email so that I had a chance to learn that my ego had taken over and I'd given into it, and I'll never do that.
Just for the sake of, thank you for that. I don't know that there is anybody here or online that hasn't had some sort of experience similar to that. But number 20 is, if you don't subdue the opponent inside your own anger, although you subdue opponents outside, they just keep coming. Muster the forces of loving kindness and compassion and subdue your own mind. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So I'm wondering, Sukha, about your loving kindness to yourself.
And I did that. I accepted that, okay, this is a learning experience and it's okay. But to learn.
To learn. And to love yourself for having had those moments. I mean, that we all have them. And as you said, externally, there was no one there to throw out that anger at, but you threw it here. Mm-hmm. And to be able to hold that anger is destructive. But being able to notice and be with it and care for it is really a critical piece. Good work. Anyone else? Someone else? Yes, Nancy.
Well, I'm just having a good time with number one, and the fact that appreciating this boat. It's been 68 plus years now, holding me and changing and still carrying me, even with the changes that I could be unhappy about, but I choose to not choose to be grateful for all the things that are working well. And, but for me, with this practice and being part of the Sangha, one of the biggest things is just paying more attention to the difference in my consciousness and my mind. And where just watching my mind and finding curiosity and where it decides to go or look at and what I want to attend to, and kind of learn how to be more intentional about where it goes, and all of the other in the other 37 tend to affect where my mind goes. And it's the practice has helped me. I don't get angry very often, and it's what I've really enjoyed is a distinction I read that I grew up saying if you're angry, you're a bad person. And so there was a lot of shame with that. And it's just an emotion. And so it's just how language we've learned, heard Deepa so often, so if you don't like that word, change it. And it's this, it helps me to say, I feel angry or I feel sad, not I am angry, I am sad. And for me, that's just a huge distinction in whether I'm clinging to the emotion or letting it go, and I'm observing and I'm more conscious, and it affects how I decide to respond.
So you've been noticing more through the first verse, which is this home, this spirit, this body, and how you don't need to own whatever emotions surface for you, good or bad, really. I mean, it's that clinging, that attachment, and not needing to own it, but recognize it, notice it, and then allow it to pass through. How has that shifted for you in terms of your day-to-day
Well,
course?
of course, when I met my grandson a couple of weeks ago, that was a huge opportunity to, watch. And there were, lots of things arising. And watching my daughter, she's very emotionally labile after, 2 weeks of having a baby and sleep deprived and all that. And she's still my child. I have a grandchild, but she's still my child. And just, watching how I felt and how she felt, and not getting my, being conscious whether I'm asked an opinion or not. And I was able to, I think, just be present with the whole family and experience in a really lovely way there, without creating, friction, and just being helpful. But when I went to leave, it was like that physiological thing that you talked about. I went to my grandson, Calvin, was asleep in my son-in-law's arms, and I went to give Zeke a kiss goodbye. And he said, even though he's asleep, you can kiss him. So I leaned down to kiss his head, and all of a sudden, the dam broke, and I was bawling. And I had not decided to do it. I was completely out of control of sobbing, and I kissed him, and I went to the car, and I had to just sit in the car and cry for a while before I could drive. And it was interesting to watch how deeply ingrained all of my old, attachments to and stuff. And I'll let it go and everything's fine. But, I've always been very emotional about, in a grateful way for the loved ones in my life, y'all included.
It's really important with these practices, they allow us to notice, to have information around these experiences, these emotional experiences, whether they're happiness or sadness or anger or frustration or joy, and that they all come and go and that they're okay. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have them. It's how we outer direct or inner direct, and probably both, that creates our own layer of suffering. And so the more we can recognize this, and these practices really give us great opportunities to ingrain those words into us so that when times show up, when we least expect it sometimes, we're able to just probably in ourselves feel that. And the more we practice it, just like a muscle, the more you do it, the stronger you get. And the more you use these practices, the stronger you get with honoring yourself and recognizing these emotions. There's another edition of the 37 practices, and it reads like this: while the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. It seems to me it's another great way of looking at these emotions, and especially the anger that can come up regardless of the depth, the strength, the bigness of it, and to recognize, oh yeah, that's there too. That's there too. And also this. Others.
All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay, this is Josh, everyone. Hi. Thanks for sharing. I don't think I've met everyone here this afternoon, but it's nice to see you. Yeah, and I'm sorry I have a cold right now, the tail end of a cold, so a little muddled. But yeah, I've really been liking these. There's quite a spectrum here. I think though, it's what others have focused on this morning is just the beginning, the first couple or the first few, and those have made some sense to me. The boat certainly, and number 2 actually also I thought was pretty powerful. Is in particular the commentary that we also read the last couple of weeks, and that is which one is that? It's the one by Thupten Chodron that we were looking at.
Yes.
And number 2 reads, attraction to those close to you catches you in its currents. Aversion to those who oppose you burns inside. Indifference that ignores what needs to be done is a black hole. Leave your homeland. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. And what struck me in those commentaries was a discourse on that keyword homeland. And it's relatively extensive, and I don't mean to necessarily take us there for another close reading. I know we've looked at this, but it's the 3 poisonous attitudes that starts on page 40, and they read each line, but I thought the leaving the homeland was particularly powerful, and the author's explication on that keyword. Um, and that keyword kind of resonated for me with, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You were talking just before about your daughter and your grandson, and
Nancy.
that experience of having to depart from that, and there was still what seemed to be a lot of tension. And so I just quickly went back to that, and this isn't related specifically to your circumstance at all. But this kind of having to like constantly be leaving an experience, a place, or even like a stimulus, all right, or like a spectrum of stimulus that we are exposed to. And on 44, they explicate this as, in Dharma practice, we are trying to uproot wrong views and ways of thinking that we've had since beginningless time. We're trying to let go of emotions and attitudes that society assumes are real and beneficial. And then they also lead into the experience of living at the monastery as a way to kind of break from some of those difficult habit patterns. So that key word, that expression, that phrase, leave your homeland, I've been kind of using that as not a mantra or anything, but just as a way to return to that idea of departure, of continually leaving a set of circumstances, or say the comfort of a place, or even the comfort of people, and to be able to kind of continually just pay attention to the way that almost operates like a slipstream, right, of experience, moving into the next one and the next one and the next one, and trying to not let that be violent, just kind of in that experience, but the violence is in my own reactivity, which then occurs in number 3, this third passage, where they write, don't engage disturbances and reactive emotions gradually fade away. Don't engage distractions and spiritual practice naturally grows. Keep awareness clear and vivid and confidence in the way arises. Rely on silence, and this is the practice of a bodhisattva. And so I like those two pairings, this idea of leaving the homeland, whatever those circumstances are, even if they're like the internal experience or habit in the feeling tone or the feeling tonality, say, of that pattern, when it starts to change. And then that does start to cause some kind of internal disturbance. But then also recognizing external disturbances. I'm a teacher at the university here at the University of Georgia, and so I have quite a few students now. And it's this point in the semester, I didn't get sick from them, and I did take a COVID test. It was negative, so I just got it from my son, I believe. But it also sort of felt like there was like so much going on, and just teaching quite a few classes and lots of other external duties. And that felt like it kind of caught up to me, because there was still like this pretty deeply internal reactiveness going on. And ultimately it seemed like it seemed to kind of finally manifest as sickness, where I just sort of like shut down and have to just kind of put a lot of those external things aside and kind of come back to just taking care of the body a little bit, taking care of the boat just for a couple of days while it passes. But yeah, just not to go off too much on a tangent, but just this idea of in this like continual departure from any kind of safe place, really, or any kind of thing that may appear to be sustainable. That there's, and then in that there is like a disturbance or a reactivity that comes with that change and shift, and just noting that and trying to just see it almost sometimes just in a bit, what's the bigger picture, even, you know, in the span of a life or many lives, and just to like de-emphasize whatever that experience that is occurring right then is, and just to try to dissolve any of the response to that stimulus.
Josh, I think you point out a really nice piece of these practices, and that's that truly one flows into the other and into the other to give us some guidance. And so when you look at the first one is talking about the boat or our bodies. And then the second is the attraction and aversion that comes up with our bodies that we notice pretty regularly if we're in touch with what's going on. And then it talks about not engaging disturbances and reactive emotions. But that really is about being aware of when it comes. And sometimes they come, boom, big, when you least expect it. But truly being able to just notice where things are at in your body. And this guides us into that. And most of these verses allow us to learn through the following one to the other to the other. So by maybe collapsing them into 3 verses, you've got a whole menu of ways of managing what goes on in our world. Thanks. Comments about any of that, or anybody else looking to do some sharing here this afternoon? I focused this week on number 22, which is whatever arises in experience is your own mind. Mind itself is free of any conceptual limitations. Know that and don't generate. Subject-object fixations. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So the whole concept of mind-made, especially if we recognize when there are thoughts coming up or emotions coming up, what we do in those moments, where they go, and being able to really recognize that in ourselves is really important. I've had many opportunities this last week to be able to do that. And I think with this practice, it's helped me recognize when it surfaces.
Stoma,
Yes,
let me get my video going here.
Jim.
Hi. I was also with number 22, excuse me, and with number 2. Last week, I spoke about, or maybe it was the week before, spoke about driving down my usual route to get to Brevard from Hendersonville and seeing this dwelling that I developed just an entire mental narrative around what this person was like and why I didn't like them. I don't know this person. It was just this entirely just a fantasia of associations to this person in this house who had an American flag displayed and whose property looked kind of ramshackle. And I was astonished at the how my mind created this enemy for me to react to. And this is a road that I drive down frequently, so this has become my practice for the past couple of weeks, is to see what's going on in the mind as I pass this place. And it's interesting. just knowing that this is kind of a knee-jerk habitual reflex and that there's an alternative to that, and just seeing it happen in real time has diminished it considerably, to the point that when I drove by this morning, I was just barely aware of any kind of reactivity at all. And it occurred to me that I could make a choice at that point to practice loving kindness with respect to this unknown individual. And it was a feeling of great joy that came about. So I am very grateful to this person, whoever they are, for providing me this opportunity for practice. It's really it drove home the message of number 22. Whatever arises in experience is in your own mind. Know that and don't generate subject-object fixations. Easier said than done, but still doable.
Thank you, Jim. I think when we have opportunities like that, which occur regularly, and you've recognized the first reaction, then you get to realize every time thereafter that there it is, there it is, there it is. And there is a saying, all enemies or difficulties are teachers. And if we can truly look at it that way, it allows us to grow in a way that we don't expect. There's in this other alternative reading is really discussing emptiness, realizing emptiness. Whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind signs of subject and object. So it's really, we were born with this thinking process. It came to us, we created it. And what we do with that is up to us. And the practice helps us to move through those moments of challenge and difficulty, or again, joy, when we really feel like, oh my God, this is my grandchild and I'm so happy to be with him. And now I'm separating away. I grew up with having big difficulty with transitions, and it became in others a problem. Well, you always have problems with transition, and I saw it as a bad thing. And then over time, I realized, it's a transition, and I can just lean into it. And it still sometimes isn't easy. It's difficult to step away from people I care about, but I recognize it, and that's the key here for all of us. Thanks, Jim. Other comments or yes, Nancy?
Well, I think one thing that I didn't mention about being with the baby was just realizing how different this, as Brian called him, he's a little Buddha. He has no ego at all.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what anything's called. All he can feel is discomfort or comfort and hunger, or just basic needs. And it was really interesting to see how he communicated comfort or a need, but nothing about I. There just was, and it's going to change. He definitely knows the difference already in whether he's with mom or dad, much less someone else. But there's no aversion. Might not be his first choice if he's hungry. But that was really, I saw myself observing, with that beginner's mind of this child, and thinking, I have a choice still at my age to have a beginner's mind that's more, not identifying and claiming and judging. It was really a very blessing. I'd love to be with anybody's baby.
Thank you. What's his name?
Callum, it means dove.
Dove. So just like Callan, right?
Callum.
Callum, just like Callum, just like Callum. I mean, that could be your own personal mantra as things surface, as things come up. Yeah, thank you. And just in general, any comments about this practice for you, even if you don't have a highlighted one that has stand out, just in general, your practice around these, because again, this is not something to tuck away and say, okay, we're done, we've done this part. This is really a piece of our practice as moving into the Bodhisattva way.
I'd like to make a comment
Yes.
about that so much. So I really had the privilege of taking a month with the 37 practices because I'm in the Dharmacharya program. And so, so it was like a daily practice that we should have, and then we started with day one or the first stanza on day one, and then would read it in the morning, and then in the evening, we would read it again. Actually, I put it on my recorder, so I did it as an audio and had little kind of like melody that went to each one of them, which was really kind of cool. And so, so at the end of the day, we would not only read it again, but we would bow. So we would have a physical movement as we were finishing that stanza for the day. And then as time went on, we would do each one. So on day two, we would do day one and then day two and do that every single day for 37 days. And so, the other thing that came to mind as I was doing those practices is then there were all the other things too, as far as practice is concerned. Whatever our focus would be on Sundays with Dharma talks, whatever our focus would be on Tuesdays for 50 days to transformation, whatever we were focusing on for Dharma contemplation, and then, just trying to develop a daily practice. And so I have had a challenge with being in the spin of it. Like there were so many things that I was focusing on at the time that I just felt like I was in a spin for some of it. And still kind of do feel like I'm in a spin with it because it's just a bit overwhelming for me. As I say, it's a bit overwhelming for me. But one of the things I've learned so far that has really been very beneficial is the discipline to do it. So I didn't do it every single 37 days, but I did get right back on and continue to practice. And the whole idea, or just disciplining myself to do those things, has been very beneficial. And gives me more grounding and more steadiness and more ease in my practice. So, the whole spinning was about feeling like I had to do every single piece, all the assignments, all of the new things that I was learning, and I had to do all of those, and there was a lot of efforting that was going on with that. And these 37 practices we could really do for a year, for 50 weeks of transformation. But it really takes on all of the different aspects of what there is to learn, the 37 practices of what there is to learn in becoming more wise in the Dharma. So that was my experience with it for last month and then now. And I'm most grateful to be in a Sangha practicing this together, because what a gift that is.
Thanks, Elsie. You know, it brings up the whole idea of practice. And whether it's going to the gym, or for me now, I'm going to the pool and swimming. Whatever it is that we choose to do, walking, bicycling, whatever it is, why do we do it? You know, why is it important? Because I must, I have to, I have family, health issues that I don't want to take on, or because it feels really good in the end. It feels really good in the end. And so whether we do all 37 and we build them up first and then second and third, or as I've been doing it, just choosing one or two, reading it in the morning and then reading it at night to see how was that? Where did it go with me today? And recognizing it as it comes up. I think that step in is the most critical piece here. Yeah.
So I haven't formally taken up these practices as they are listed here, but in my other practices, there's certainly intentional bodhisattva conduct, threaded for sure through it. But something I notice is, let me take this out, I'm doing myself again. Something I notice, it's this mind is so funny. And this is a pattern. And I'm noticing it come up with this is there's this aversion and resistance to there are these certain times where I notice there's an aversion and resistance to taking up a particular practice like this right now. And so I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is that resistance? And what I notice is it's like not wanting to look, like there's an accountability there that requires me to look. And it's like, ooh, when you look, you're gonna see, And so I notice when my mind gets there, it's this not wanting to see because there's usually an element of perfectionism in there. Like if I see, then I have to also, quote, get right. I have to somehow be perfect at it. But what I've noticed, and this is me kind of talking to my own mind right now, it's like, well, what I notice is every time I'm willing to look, even if I'm falling short, I know where I am, and that feels really good. It actually feels really good for me to go, oh, this is where you are with this. Because even all the practices and things that I take up, all of the chanting things, I will cut off all evil within me, I will save all of it. I fail every day at them, but I come back to them over and over again. And it's because I know that it is within me, that I know that I am capable. And so it's interesting to just notice, even right now, the resistance to it, and to know that this is familiar. I know you, I know you mind. I know this way of operating that doesn't want to look, doesn't want to be held accountable because it also wants to do it perfectly. But I also know that every time I look, even when I miss the mark, it feels so good to know not only that the effort is there, but that I was willing to look and that I can continue. And that is enough, which is quite phenomenal to feel. But doesn't mean that mind doesn't come up still, that doesn't want to look. But I'm talking to, hey mind, it's good. Cool? All right, great. All right, thank y'all for listening.
Thank you, Santikar. I think that's probably true in a lot of ways for most of us, is what will I see when I look? And then what will I do once I see it? And it's all okay. Begin again. I once had I'm sure I shared with some of you, I once had a naturopath that was suggesting that I take everything out of my diet and then slowly enter it in piece by piece by piece. And I'm sure I squinched up my face and thought, oh God, really? And I know I didn't say it, but I know on facially, I said it loud and clear. And she said, well, what are you willing to do to feel better? And I can't, that's there for me over and over again. I've shared it many times, probably with some of you, certainly with the children I worked with. And that's really an important piece for us to look at. When we get, things get hard, or we keep going into the same place, doing the same things. We can come back to these 37 practices, whether it's this particular iteration of it or another one, and we can look at how can I tackle this particular one. This week it might be anger. Oh, there it is. Where'd that come from? Well, maybe it was sitting there for the longest time. And now I get to be with it, as opposed to I have to. Oh, I get to be with it. I get to look at this. It's an invitation. So we're getting near the end of our time for today. I want to thank you all for participating in these 37 practices of a bodhisattva. I want to remind us that next week we're going to be starting in the Digha Nikaya. I think it's 16. Is that right? And I want to finish with the last one, the last practice. That doesn't mean the last one we're done, means that's just the 37th practice. To dispel the suffering of beings without limit, with wisdom freed from the three spheres, direct all goodness generated by these efforts to awakening. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. May you have and experience loving kindness. May you be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May you be at ease. May you be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for being
Thank you,
here.
everyone.
Thanks.